There is a famous joke about teachers and teaching in Pakistan that there are 3 good reasons to become a teacher: June, July, and August. Thank you. Ken Robinson, in his famous talk, says that, and quotes, that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. Number 1, the people who divide the world in 2 kinds of people. And number 2, those who don't. And frankly speaking, this is true, and I firmly believe that this is true, that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. One, who don't do the job. They love it. And they live their job. And others are those who do the job for the salary. And they think that they are doing the job and they are living their life. Teaching is a wonderful profession if you love it. I had been to teaching for the last 15 years, and I joined this profession by choice. And I really enjoyed this profession, and I enjoy it every day. Because every day you deal with the beautiful minds. Teaching is really lovely. I remember, how many of you actually remember your childhood? How many of you miss your schools, your colleges? And the question for the adults, your universities. You miss it. Think in your heart why you miss your childhood. Did you ever think that why a little child in the age bracket of 5 to 11 is more creative, more innovative, more thoughtful in that specific age? They play with the Play-Dohs, they play with the blocks, they build structures, they dismantle those structures, and they don't mind dismantling those structures. They ask hundreds of questions, and they draw weird things, like my 5 years old son draws a ghost, fills it with a color, and writes "Dad" on it. And above all, he brings that sketch to me and says, "Hey, Dad." I strongly wish to see that day when he sketches his mom. But actually, those children are fearless. But what happens to those children when they enter in elementary, in secondary school, in middle school and secondary school and higher secondary school? What happens to their creativity? Why they start building a shell around them? In early years, they ask so many questions. They ask hundreds of questions. They repeat their questions. What happens to this human when he grows elder? Before answering this question, let me show you a picture. How many of you know that's what is going on actually in this picture? All right, so most of you know that this picture is taken from a flag ceremony which normally happens at Pakistan-India border. And we know the whole story. We know how it happens. But let's assume for a while that we don't know about this ceremony. Let's dismantle this belief that we know that on one side there is Pakistan Rangers and on the other side there is BSF for a while, and focus on this snapshot. Just focus on this snapshot and conclude what they are doing. If you show this picture, this snapshot to somebody and say, okay, fine, this is the snapshot, and conclude what's going on, you will be getting hundreds of funny remarks and funny conclusions. Like somebody may say that, okay, fine, there was a competition of leg stretching and the guy in the black won the match. Or somebody may say that something is going to pass under their legs and they are practicing this thing. How many of you don't believe that this one single snapshot is enough to conclude about anything, about the whole ceremony? No. So, we mind concluding about the whole ceremony from one single snapshot, but we don't mind concluding about a child's capabilities on exam results. Thank you. I ask you a question. What happens to the children when they grow up? Why they start building shells around them? Why they start becoming frightened? Study says that there are two kinds of mindsets, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. There is one basic reason why they stop questioning, because we, the teachers and the schools, invade. We start judging them. We start proving them right and wrong, and they start building shells around them. So I said there are two kinds of mindsets. The one is the fixed mindset and the other one is a growth mindset, and the research shows that those children who are appreciated, loved and not proved wrong, they belong to growth mindset. And when they grow up, they are not frightened by the growth of other people. They are more empathetic, they keep more tolerance, and they learn and inspired. They get inspiration from those people who grow, and they do the wonders. But the ones who are judged and proved right and wrong on the basis of exam results and testing, they belong to fixed mindset. They do not go for the challenging options. Rather, they go for the less doable jobs so that they won't be proved right or wrong. And when they grow up as adults, they get frightened by the growth of others. Hatred, jealousy, and all these negative emotions prevail in them. We cannot challenge tomorrow until we challenge today. We cannot challenge tomorrow until we challenge those orthodox ideas and practices which we take as for granted. Pakistan at the moment is standing at 133rd position in the world if you compare all education models. This is by UNESCO report to 2011. We are just above those African countries which are suffering from civil war. 60 to 63% of the total education sector is with the public sector, and the rest is slipped in the hands of private sector. And the private sector has opened multiple channels. The biggest issue is that we do not have any legislation. We have only one article, that is Article 25, introduced in 18th Amendment 5 years back, and that article is right to education. We only learned one thing: how to raise fancy slogans. In fact, we are suffering from three major issues. The very first issue is over-testing. We are testing and testing. I come back to this point. The second biggest problem is obsession of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. The third biggest problem is the aimless literacy. So let's start with the first one. We introduced a model of testing. I ask you a question: how many of you exactly can quantify your emotions and feelings? I mean, if you had been in love with somebody, did you ever say that I have fallen in love with you by 18 liters? Or I hate you by 100 miles? Or I am intelligent by 600 minutes? No, you can't. You can't quantify human emotions. You can't quantify passion for and love for a subject. Nobody can quantify it. What happened to this society? Where we are heading to? Every second person is celebrating grades and the scores, which are just snapshots, just little snapshot, because judging understanding is very difficult. It is not on the surface, it is always multifaceted. You learn something in a novel situation, you apply it in some entirely different situation, and then you can say something about understanding. What you can understand from letter A and letter A star on a beautiful creamy A4 size paper, you call it transcript and degrees. What do you understand by that? What you are celebrating? And why you are cursing those who could not perform in that 3 hours paper? That is just one single snapshot. We need to think about it. The second biggest problem is obsession of STEM. Every second person in this society wants to become an engineer or a doctor. Unconsciously, we created a hype. We respect more. We give respect more to an engineer, not a writer. Who taught us that a nuclear scientist is more respectful than a writer? Who taught us that a doctor is more respectful than a poet? Does humanity need bifurcation in terms of degrees and transcripts? Do we need degrees and A stars to respect humans? Certainly not. It pushed the whole society and turned it into a volatile society. I'm not surprised when people say why our society is becoming less tolerant and more volatile. When you overemphasize on STEM, you face this. Your society turns into binary number system. They will have only black and white and no gray area. We are suffering from it. And no doubt, no wonder why today our children have started committing suicide. Still now, 5 official reported suicide cases are there. The third biggest problem is the aimless literacy. Back in 90s, civil society and government felt a dire need to promote literacy. And what we did, we changed the definition of literacy. Suddenly, it shooted from 16% to 37%. Nobody knows what is the big idea of teaching a specific content. We need to think about it. Nobody knows that why this specific curriculum is designed. What is the use of this thing after 30 years for a person? Because whatever you are studying today, it will rarely be used after 30 years because the world is changing at a very high pace. The purpose of education was not testing. Today, we defined education in a very different way and we narrowed down it to syllabus content, to examination system, and that's it. One book of 600 pages, 24 chapters, 3 papers, 1 hour, 2 hour, and 3 hour, and a beautiful transcript. This is total education. We need to redefine it. We need to change our attitudes. And we need to understand that assessment is a part of education, it is not education. If your education model cannot turn your society into more empathetic and tolerant society, better to trash it before it contaminates more minds. I can quote many examples. We have wonderful models in the world, like in South Korea. No teacher can enter in the class without training. They have to go through cycles of training. We do not have any licensing system in Pakistan because we do not have any legislation. In South Korea, they are trained and they built their thoughtful educators in the class. In Finland, which is number 1 in the world, has only 11% teacher acceptance rate. In Canada, the education sector is striving hard to bring teacher to student ratio to 5:1. Singapore is the wonderful example, the best example. Back in 50s, Singapore was suffering from the same which we are suffering from today, but they decided to build thinking schools and learning nation. And amazingly, when they started pumping dollars and dollars, millions of dollars in their education sector, their crime rate started depleting, and the day Singapore stood on 2nd position in the world, it became one of the most safest countries in the world. That means if you invest more in education, you need to invest less in judiciary and police. Coming to the solution. These 2 guys, Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. Grant Wiggins was a Harvard graduate and he introduced a model of understanding by design. That is an instruction model, but it is a way of thinking. Grant Wiggins says that whenever you want to teach something, think about it. Rationally think about it. What is the use of this content? What is the big idea behind this content? Question and question more. And your students must be able to answer the bigger questions. There is no point to get right and wrong, but it's important how thought-provoking are your questions. If you come to the comment part and if you Look at the holistic picture. We need to grow teachers. We need to invest in them. We need to lift their education, their social status. We need to respect them. If you don't invest in your teachers, they won't be able to grow as thinkers. Teaching is a profession, it's not orphanage. It's not a place where if you can't do anything, you enter in this profession. Like we normally say that if you can do, you do, but if you can't, you teach. It's different. We need to invest in teachers. We need to get more budget for education. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are stuck in a rut. We can only challenge tomorrow if we realize what are the problems today. And not only realizing, we need to step forward and we need to suggest and think and answer all these questions in our hearts. I leave you with 2 questions, rather 3 questions. Think about it. If not this, then what? If not now, then when? And if not you, then who? I thank you all.